Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Coming up next, Governor Hogan's Redistricting Commission. New county council and executive are sworn in on Monday. What does it mean? We are joined today by an astute panel of political insiders. Former Democratic Majority Leader John Hurson, Mark Uncapher, Secretary of the Maryland Republican Party, former Rockville Mayor Susan Hoffmann, and for the first time, Leslie Milano, a District 18 Democratic candidate for House of Delegates. Stay tuned for these topics and more. Governor Larry Hogan this week created an emergency commission in response to a panel of U.S. judges who unanimously ordered Maryland to submit a new map for Maryland's 6th congressional district, now held by John Delaney. The district drawn in 2011 was deemed the single greatest alteration of voter makeup of any district in the nation following the 2010 census. Mark, the three-member commission chosen by the governor for the committee are former U.S. District Judge Alexander Williams, a Democrat, Walter Olson, a Republican and senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and Ashley Olson, the state administrator of the League of Women Voters. Two more of each party will be added, and the commission has a mandate to create a plan by March 3rd, as the judge gave the state until March 7th to submit the plan. Is this governor's commission's process going to pacify the right?
Well, I don't know about pacify the right, but I think it's a good process going forward to do the commission. Certainly one of the ways to address this issue is to take Carroll County, Westminster, which doesn't really have a lot in common with Tacoma Park, and include it in District 6 and Hagerstown, and give Jamie Raskin more of Montgomery County.
Okay, now, John, at the same time, our very own Montgomery County Attorney General Brian Frosh has appealed the decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. The court gave the state a stay until July 1st, or when the Supreme Court rules, whichever comes first. Frosh's actions angered Governor Hogan, but why did he do this?
He did it because he doesn't think that the decision of the court to move this in a place where the courts are going to decide the redistricting is the right thing to do. It should be decided in a legislative setting, and that's what he's pushing for. I will tell you that I think there are a lot of people on the left who also think that it's good that he appealed it, because the Supreme Court is going to be faced with a decision about whether or not political gerrymandering is the right thing. And this might be the right case for them to say they'll refuse the appeal, which means the decision stands that there is political gerrymandering happening, which I think a lot of us, Republicans, Democrats, think is a bad idea.
Well, now, Susan, it's assumed that only the 6th and 8th districts will be redrawn, but ultimately more could happen. Just 2 years before the new census counts automatically trigger redistricting across the nation. Is this commission going to rally Marylanders in such a way that they're going to want to do this in 2021?
I think that when people look at this, they're going to want to see fairness. And there ought to be fairness, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people with whom I speak, that this should be across the nation. That this isn't just about Maryland or just about Pennsylvania, but that this should, if it's going to be an apolitical process, it needs to be apolitical from one coast of this great nation to the other.
Okay. Now, Leslie, if you'd been elected to the legislature, she came in 4th and only the top 3 went, you would be voting on the plan the governor will present prior to the end of the next session. Redistricting is still a political process in most states. Does this commission take away from the responsibility of the legislature?
I mean, in Maryland, I don't think so. Here's what happens, for us, we're lucky. We have a veto-proof majority in our legislature. So, sorry to say that for a Republican on the panel here, but it really works out well for us, because we are in a position that is unique. We need to ensure that kind Can I start over again?
No.
Okay.
You're at the-
You just
you
keep going,
can't
man.
start over. So as we go along, do you think you would vote for this plan based on the fact?
Okay, so let me just say that I don't, to your original question, I don't think that it's problematic that we have veto-proof majority. So he's not really taking over the decision of the legislature. But I think that it is, what Brian Frosch did was very important for us, not just for Maryland, but for the country, because he's pushing back and he's saying, look, we need to have some guidance. And we need to have a standardized plan, and you need to provide that for us. And if we don't have that, then we have what we have throughout the country, where you have cases like in North Carolina, where it's an absolute, ridiculous
And then
sort of
you're
situation.
absolutely right. If it were a fair process across the state, so Mississippi and Texas are the same as
But
Florida.
realistic, that's never going to happen,
No,
okay?
because we are a
so
political country.
the fact that Brian appealed it up to the Supreme Court means the Supreme Court has to make a decision.
That's right.
Is political gerrymandering okay? Is it not okay?
And we will learn
It's-
more
but
about that because
and
we're
that's a
going to be.
good thing that
it's
that
worth-
decision
And
needs to
that's
be
it,
made.
John. We're going to be back after this short break. Stay tuned. On Monday, December 3rd, this coming Monday, the new Executive and County Council will begin a new era without Ike Leggett and several veterans on the council. This seems like the ideal time to examine the new members of the council and the dynamics of change in Montgomery County. Susan, we're going to start with you. Gabe Albernaz from Kensington comes to the council at large with political community and political chops. What can you tell us about him?
Well, truth be told, I know him very well. In fact, up until Monday, December 3rd, he was my director. I work for Montgomery County Recreation, and so I know Gabe very, very well. I'm pretty excited about his election, and I think he's going to do extremely well. I have this written down because I don't want to give him short shrift here. He's his priorities. He's looking at the Health and Human Services and Public Safety Committees, and his priorities are to strengthen our safety net and system of care, particularly in the area of mental health, close the opportunity gap among children and youth, improve the perception of Montgomery County as not being business friendly, which came up a lot in the primary and the general, and then also to ensure fiscal responsibility. I think they're all very worthy priorities.
And Leslie, Will Jawando has run for office before. He's also at large. He's come from Silver Spring. What do we need to know about him?
Will Jawando, I'm really excited about him in terms of the council. He is an attorney by training. He did run twice before. This is his third run. I like his perspective and his approach because he really he has sort of a heart for social justice, but he has a mind that is focused on economic development. And so that's a really good mix for Democrats. And I think that he is going to focus his priorities on some of the sort of kitchen table issues that keep people up at night. He wants to focus on affordable housing, affordable childcare. Education was a very important part of his campaign, and he had a lot of endorsements. His endorsements sort of mirrored Mark Elrich's. So he had a lot of the unions. He had the teachers, SEIU, Sierra Club, and so while he has a lot of broad support, I think that he knows what he wants to do.
Okay, so John, now Evan Glass also won a seat at large. He's been a community and gay activist, again from Silver Spring, not Tacoma Park though. What does he add to the new council?
I think what he adds, and I talked to him today, I talked to Evan today, he adds what I think is going to be an interesting mix of somebody who really wants to tackle these problems but realizes the limitations of what to do. For instance, transportation. I mean, everybody in Montgomery County is really angry at the what we're doing on transportation. How do you fix that? How do you really dive in and do that? You got to get more cars off the road. That's one thing. But at the same time, you got to improve the roads because there's not enough space. You got to improve public transportation. So that's a big goal of his. I think another big goal is like taking what we already are spending, and this is, the new county executive, Mr. Elrich, has this also in mind. It's like taking what we're already spending and how do we use all this money we're spending in a better way? I mean, how do we provide more services by doing this? I mean, Evan came in first, in the general election, so I think he has a special responsibility to, kind of lead a little bit on the council.
And do you think he's going, since he's the first openly gay member on the council, do you think that's going to affect some of his focus?
When I know him well, and I talked to him today about that. Not his top priority. I think it's going to be inherent in the way he presents himself and approaches things. I mean, he's always going to look for, making sure that that community is particularly represented in commissions and other representation.
So now, Mark, you live in District 1. So what can you tell us about Andrew Friedson, who will be replacing Roger Berliner in District 1?
Well, it's interesting because I think he reflects a different part of the spectrum within the Democratic Party. He didn't get the union endorsements, but he got the Washington Post endorsements. I wish that some of our Republican candidates were as articulated as he has been on the need for a stronger, thriving private sector economy in this county. In some respects, I think he would argue that it's not just a perception issue, but it's a real issue. It's a reflection of his background of having to work with Peter Franchot. I think he's got a strong skill set to address some of the economic issues within the county. Among the issues that he's addressed talked about as his priority, he's very much an advocate for privatizing the DLC, the Department of Liquor Control.
Okay. So now let's go into the composition now that we know the new faces. Leslie, the new council has only one woman on it, Nancy Navarro. We've talked at great length about how we've gotten to this point of just one. But what does it mean to have only one woman on the council out of a council of 9?
So, I know all of the new council members pretty well, and I think that when you look at the span there, and you only see Nancy Navarro, who is an incumbent, the good news for us is that Gabe, Evan, Will, Andrew, they're actually feminist. They're feminists. You don't have to be a woman to be a feminist. And I think that they will be able to prioritize, or I'd say vote for, legislation and make priorities that also incorporate, what women would prioritize. But here's the problem. Problem is that it's 2018 and there's one woman and we're 50% of the vote. And if we don't have equity soon, it just puts us in a very poor position because women do prioritize, and that's why we need a diversity of opinion. It's not just gender balance. We also need a fully diverse council because we have a diverse community.
But it makes you wonder how many people on that council are probably as sensitive to pregnancy leave or family leave or daycare.
Well, the good news, though, is that I'd say that almost all of the people that I named, they have women who are advising them in a strong role, and they listen to them. Again, I think that we need more women, and I am very excited to be supporting women the next time around as well as some of the people that I mentioned. But I think that it's certainly cause for concern.
I think it's also important to make note that 3 of the 4 new members are all family men, have children. Again, I can speak for Gabe, is as much a partner with Catherine in parenting.
Well, now there's another deficit now. The new council and executive Susan have no planning experience, which Nancy Ferlorine provided for a long time on the old council. And this is a vital role for the council. So as a former mayor, how will this affect the council and the county as a whole?
Well, I think that's a really important point that you make. As everyone knows, the executive has virtually no control over planning, and so Mark's lack of experience is not as impactful. On the council, however, they are the ultimate planning board. And so they will have to learn as they go. And we have an excellent staff, but they're going to have to get into the communities and meet with their constituents and learn what their constituents are looking for, because that's how planning works. I was on the Planning Commission, the Rockville Planning Commission, before I was on the Rockville City Council and before I was mayor, and I learned so much, and it made me a better elected official because I understood what the community was looking for and how important planning is in the quality of life.
And a planner one did run in District 1, Pete Fosselman, but unfortunately he didn't.
Yeah,
run either.
Susan, I just very quickly, just to emphasize that I think this is the biggest question facing this council, the experience level that they have with planning, particularly with the county executive, who has been a very challenging force, shall we say, when he was on the council.
And votes down most master
Yeah,
plans.
and it's a big issue, and it's the one driving issue that created David Blair, created Nancy Florine, and Rose Krasnow. This is a big issue that this council, the council,
has to
face, not just the county executive, but the council, because they're in charge.
Well,
as you said.
and this is a perfect segue because John Mark Elridge also has little experience, and he's
correct.
admitted in working with the state and has said that he hopes his new budget director, our former Senator
Correct.
Rich Manalino, who's going to be his budget director, can also help him in Annapolis. With Nancy Florine, Roger Berliner, George Leventhal leaving, years of working with state government have left. How are we going to fare with the state in light of the lack of experience during this election?
Here's the bad news. We're like just everybody else. I mean, we don't have the most experienced people besides Rich Madaleno.
But he's going to have a little work to do as
But
a
he
budget
has a
director.
lot of work to do down in Annapolis. Good news is there are a lot of new county executives around the state, and they're all going to have a challenge here. So we're not alone in that challenge. So.
But the elephant in the room isn't the experience level. It probably is.
And there is no elephant in terms of Republican
There
either,
is
I
no
might
elephant. But
add.
the elephant,
Or
in the,
donkey.
the elephant in the room is the Kerwin Commission.
Yeah.
And the impact that it could potentially have on Montgomery County. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars changes, and that really is going to be an interesting question.
And that's going to be something that I think we're going to be talking about for a long time. And the irony is Ike Leggett and the current executives signed a pact and said one for all and all for one. Well, they're just about all gone now.
Right.
So also Brooks and and Elridge and the
Here's
others.
the good news. The chairman of Budget and Tax and the chairman of Ways and Means, both of where those issues go to, are from Montgomery County.
Okay, now Mark, with term limits, there still aren't any Republicans on the council. Looking ahead to 2022, Craig Rice, Nancy DeVaro, and Hans Remer are going to leave the council. From a Republican perspective, are term limits the solution? But more importantly, how do the Republicans face
remember,
the new council?
term limits were not just Republican because, of course, it was voted
I
on
know.
that 70%.
But you had more hope
I think it reflected a broad frustration of, frankly, business as usual within the county. So I think those folks, if I could, those folks, this is what they wanted, was a turnover in the council, and I think are quite satisfied with seeing
But
that.
how do the Republicans think about the new council? It's
Well, sure.
very different
Listen,
than the old one.
It is different from the. I don't know that. Remains to be seen what it is. I think I'm more encouraged with Andrew than with Roger Berlin. I mean, so there's going to be pluses and minuses overall. There are going to be challenges with the budget. We've identified the fact that revenues are not going up as fast as personnel costs. This council and this county executive are going to be faced with some difficult decisions.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. So I think that with Mark Elridge, though, off the council, it is far less leaning to the left. I don't think that the new people are necessarily that far to the left. I think they're pretty pragmatic.
Not yet.
I think that what I'm hearing is that perhaps the ideologue, who was Mark Elridge, is no longer on the council.
Yeah.
He's still in the business of government, so that he's still there. But in terms of the impact on the council, he's not there. He was only one of 9 votes, and often was out there by himself, voting against things that everybody else was voting for, or was part of a small minority.
Okay, so I want to ask you, panel, and we'll start with John and move this way quickly. In one sentence, how do you assess MoCo moving forward under this new leadership? One sentence.
One sentence.
And your time
They're
is
in
up.
kindergarten.
They're in kindergarten. Susan.
I think that there's some great new talent, and I think we have some very good experienced talent as well.
Compound sentence. Okay, your sentence.
They are certainly younger, but they probably know less about the bureaucracy, and that's probably not a bad thing.
Okay, Mark, your one sentence.
I think they face some serious fiscal challenges. It's important for them to address that in order to be able to maintain the service expectations that Montgomery County residents have.
Okay.
That was one sentence, but it was a little
It
long.
was run on. Okay, we have about a minute and a half left. We're going to start with you, Mark Time. Very, very fast. What piece of advice do you have for the newly elected council members? And
Well,
it's be very fast.
Focus on services and don't focus on the kind of press release initiatives that get attention in the Washington Post.
Leslie.
I would say go big, because there is only a certain amount of that they can get done in the first 2 years that really matters.
Susan.
I think that focusing on building the tax base is the most important thing that they can do.
John.
I'm going to go with Mark, which is kind of focus on something that you can do that's going to make a difference, and talk to your community. Don't lose your base. Go back there, talk to them. That's very important.
And
Keep
my
that.
piece of advice would be, remember, you are making decisions for a broad community, not your little bases of support. Forget the grudges. Don't be belligerent. Be for the whole county. And on that note, we're going to be right back for parting shots. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Council members Nancy Florine, Roger Berliner, and George Leventhal for their years of service to Montgomery County, and I wish them the very best as they move on to their new endeavors. I also want to thank Ike Leggett for decades of service to Montgomery County, and I hope retirement brings you new adventures and joys. And now with parting shots, John.
I'm going to go with the same theme, which is thanking all the people who ran. I mean, we forget how hard that is. You know, it's really hard to do that. And you go through a lot, and we've been through it, many of us, all of us, I think, all of us.
Have you run, Mark?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, then 4 out of 5.
He's run for, well, whatever.
party, yeah.
But the point is, the idea of getting out there and running is extremely important, and I thank everybody who did it.
Mark.
After the election, a revelation came out that a senior official in the Montgomery County had embezzled about $6 million over a 6-year period. And what was disconcerting about this, among other things, was that it wasn't picked up by the county, but it was picked up by the IRS. One of the issues that we really got to take a look at are the financial controls that allowed that. I think it was Pete Fosselman who described the phenomena of what he called politically connected sock puppet nonprofits that may be funded and that there may not be sufficient oversight. So I would encourage the new administration to take a strong look at this so this doesn't happen again.
And they've already put new measures in place. Hopefully it'll be fixed. Susan.
So, according to Maryland Matters, on the Monday before the runoff in Mississippi between Senator, oh my goodness,
Smith.
Cindy Hyde-Smith and Mike Espy, the Republican Party of Maryland put out an email asking Republicans in Maryland to make calls on her behalf.
Okay, and Leslie, you're last today.
Yeah, thank you. First, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. So tomorrow is an election for our state chair for the Democratic Party, and Kathleen Matthews is one of 2 people who are running. She's running for re-election, and I hope that she wins. I support her wholeheartedly. I think she did a fantastic job, and so I think that her opponent Cummings is her primary argument is essentially that we ended up with a Republican governor, and therefore, it wasn't great for us. So I think that that's a false argument, and I'm hoping that she will win re-election.
Okay, so thank you all very much. Thanks for coming this first time. Thanks to our panel and crew, and to you for joining us each and every week for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show, 21 this week. See you next time. I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.